is the Simpit. I'm your host, Sean Cole, but the real star of today's show is the Moza Racing CS steering wheel. This is a less expensive or more affordable wheel rim available from Moza Racing, and despite the fact that it will work or it is compatible with all of their wheelbases like the R16 or the R21, it's really more targeted or marketed to go with the newest wheelbase, the R9. Now you might think that looks a lot like the original RS steering wheel, and yes, it does look a lot like the RS steering wheel, the original round wheel by Moza Racing, and it does share a lot of the features, but as I mentioned, it is a lot less expensive, so there are some corners that were cut to make this wheel rim work out, but as you can see, it's a pretty nice or pretty fancy looking steering wheel. The new CS steering wheel, it costs $279. That's over $200 less expensive than the original RS steering wheel. And like I said, it does carry over many of the most important features. You've got the Bluetooth wireless connection. You've got that NRG style quick release. You've got forged carbon fiber paddle shifters, as well as rotary dials and the programmable color continuous light rev strip. With the addition of the CS steering wheel, Moza Racing really rounded out that lower end of their lineup, and I say lower end very loosely. Lower end pro setup, lower end when considering entering the direct drive level wheel market, but when you're looking at the CS or the R9 wheelbase, I should say, for $439, matched with the CS pedals at $499, and now the CS steering wheel for $279, you're looking at an entry level of $1,217 that again isn't inexpensive, but is a very reasonable price for entering a complete racing package again at that direct drive steering wheel level. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at the CS steering wheel and talk about some of the features that comes along with the wheel, starting with it is a full size or a 13-inch or 300mm round steering wheel. And it does measure in at about 1.3 inches or 33 millimeters thick. The rim is fully covered in what I believe is pleather or leather style vinyl, but could easily fool me for some cheap leather wrapping. The wheel rim is very round, with a slight bump on each side for your thumbs to rest upon. Along the back side, at the handhold positions, are a series of bumps for grip at your fingertips, and then at the top, a silver center stripe. The center tri-spoke of the rim is aluminum with a brushed black anodized finish to it. And at the center is a Moza logo decal. The button box portion of the wheel is also made of black anodized aluminum, both the front cover as well as the back side. Each input of the wheel has very clear white markings, making their locations on the wheel that much more pronounced. At the upper left and easily at the ready of your left thumb are two different buttons and a mini joystick that can be pressed in as well. The buttons are medium large in size and have a somewhat plasticky feel about them to the touch. They are non-shielded buttons, with the closest being labeled flash and the mini joystick being labeled menu. At the right top thumb position are two more buttons and a second mini joystick, with the closer button being marked for pit and the joystick being marked for glance. Between the upper button groups at the top is a small continuous light rev strip. This is a bar of color like you see on displays versus the typical multiple LED lights seen on most wheels. Below the tri-spoke and on the left side of the button is a 20-position rotary dial that also has a push-in function. This dial has a nice aluminum top in black that has the tiniest of texture lines running along its side. Each detent of this dial is easily felt with a nice audible click and a tactile click when turned. The same goes for the push-in function, which also has a good feeling to its pressing. That dial is labeled brake bias, and just below it is another button that is marked for the camera. On the right side below the tri-spoke is a second rotary dial marked traction control, and below it, a button marked for reverse. So that's a total of 34 mappable controls. However, I gotta be honest, that's calling these a 10-way switch. At the most, I'm gonna map them as 4, and that takes you down to 22 mappable controls on the face side of the wheel rim, which is still a fair amount. Now, turning our attention to the back side of the wheel rim button box, it is fairly plain. Again, it is made of aluminum that is anodized in black. At the top are some cooling holes drilled into it, And at the center, the most prominent thing is the 10 ball bearing NRG style quick release that is also in black and it has a nice white Moza logo on its side. Inside the quick release are the push-in pins that power the wheel, but inside is the Bluetooth that provides the actual communications with the Moza wheel bases. To each side of the quick release are the shifter assemblies. These are housed in stylish shaped outer housings in black aluminum. At the hinge point there is a gold aluminum collar on both sides and plastic bushings between the housing and the actual shifter arms. These arms are also black aluminum and extend out from that pivot point to hold the forged carbon paddle shifters. At the end of the housing, and about midway up the length of the shifter arms, are the magnetic releases for the shifter. The paddles themselves are medium length with an angled shape to them. These are inflexibly rigid, measuring in at over 3 millimeters thick. Their total length is about 3.4 inches or 86 millimeters long, and the way they are mounted, they rest at an inch or 24.7 millimeters inset from the side of the rim. They can also be remounted about a 1/4 inch wider if wanted. The paddle shifters at default are 1 5/8 inches or 41 millimeters set back from the rim, but the wheel does come with aluminum extenders that can reposition the shifter by almost 3/8 of an inch or 8 millimeters closer or further from the rim. When you activate or pull the shifters, at the moment the magnetic releases, almost instantly they go to full throw, which is about 1/3 of an inch or almost 9 millimeters of travel. The Moza Racing CS steering wheel does come with a sticker sheet that has a lot of common to real life racing titles on the names of the stickers, and you can see they have some cool colors and shapes that correspond with the wheel. And for those who like to stylize their wheel or add a little color, they may use these stickers. Others might prefer the pre-done titles in white, and others might ignore all of that and just go by memory. When I looked at the sheet, I found a few that worked for my mapping in-game, but that isn't exactly the naming I'd want on my stickers for in-sim, maybe in a real car. Anyways, it wasn't my favorite sticker set, but I did like the little colored circles that fit in the buttons the most. So as you can see, there are a lot of features packed into this steering wheel, and yes, it is missing a lot of features, or a few features, that the RS steering wheel has. So you can see where they did cut some corners or give you a little less, but this is a lot of steering wheel for the money. Now with that, you still do have some of the programmable options through the Moza software that also go with the RS steering wheel. So when we're talking about that continuous light rev strip, it has the same abilities as the RS wheel, meaning that you can change the way it flashes or progresses, as well as change the colors to one of 7 available, as well as change the RPMs for each stage of the lighting. Via the software, you can also make sure the firmware for the wheel rim is up to date with a single click. When it comes down to on-the-track driving, I always say this, or at least recently I've been saying it all the time, it starts with the quick release. It starts with how does the wheel go on and off of the wheelbase, and in some rigs like mine, you can kind of be trapped. When you're using a full-size 13-inch wheel, it can get a little difficult getting in and out of your rig, so you might do this more often than you think. But again, I've said it over again, this all-metal NRG style 10 bearing quick release is my favorite on the market that I use in sim racing, and it's as simple as that. You heard the connection. You heard how cool that is, and if you didn't get it lined up, this is the other cool. That one just went on nice, right? Let's put it on crooked, right? You hear how strong the click is. It is rock solid rigid. So is the base, so is the rim. It is a pro level connection setup, and I love that about this wheel rim. So beyond that, let's talk about the overall comfort. So when you get your hands on the wheel rim, it is a comfortable wheel rim, and it is a nice feeling in your hand. The finish is very smooth. I mean, it's almost bordering on slippery, but I wouldn't go as far as to call it slippery. But it's definitely not baby soft like a super high-end steering wheel that you would see on a more expensive wheel rim. And that definitely feels like an area where money was saved to bring you this wheel at this price point. The shape is nice in that the generic round wheel feel with no real ergonomics built into it, except some gripping bumps at the 3, 9, and 12 o'clock positions, and they do make the wheel a little bit more comfortable than if it was perfectly round. The wheel rim is heavy, and there's a little bit of mass that is felt when turning the wheel despite the force feedback coming from behind it. With that said, when matched with a car where this size wheel would be used in, like a Mazda for example, it is a very good stable platform, and it gives you a really good balance or leverage point against the force feedback that's coming from the car. This is also true in just about anything oval where the weight really isn't a factor, but the big 13-inch wheel rim is in terms of delicately setting the car into the corners. Over time, the finish of the wheel rim didn't excite or bother me, as it was just something I wasn't thinking about once driving. Good enough, I guess. It is the button box portion of the CS steering wheel that things really take a turn for the better. The shifters on the wheel are fantastic and have the feeling of a much higher end wheel. They are super rigid, they are super positive clicks, and the action on them is as nice as any out there. In fact, I can't really tell them apart from the RS wheel. Awesome! It is also the buttons and dials on the face of the wheel that feel high quality. When driving, the top 2 buttons on each side are easily accessible. They are medium-large buttons with medium resistance. There's a nice audible click when pressed, and for the headphone drivers out there, you can feel that click confirming application as well. The mini joysticks just to the inside are nice for added controls, but they are a bit delicate in operation for direction. This did limit me to realistically mapping them to only up and down or left and right to be able to actually use them while on the fly. That made them very dependable and added to the function of the wheel. A nice touch is that it does take a bit of pressure to engage the button function of these, and that allowed me to map them and use them as a function as well while on the fly. The lower 2 buttons, one on each side, were out of my reach while my hand was still in driving position, but they work great for things you don't want to accidentally press while driving, like tow or a pause button. They activate with the same pressure as the top buttons. The lower radial dials, 1 per side, were really nice for a wheel of this level. And I gotta tell you, the aluminum knobs have that old stereo school feel about them with those little vertical lines, just that texture that makes me remember that from back from in the day with an old stereo system. And it's also the way that indent is, and that click, it just feels like an old stereo from back in my childhood. Plus, the more modern added function of the press-in makes it that much cooler a button. The way I map my wheel, I used about and had 18 mappable controls, which is about the bare bones minimum for high-end cars. But that is about when I would be switching over to a butterfly style wheel anyways. The added bonus of the constant LED light strip was cool, and being able to match this color for each and every car I drive to match their dash or wheel rim in car was even cooler. In the end, for an affordable, in the grand scheme of things, I would say that Moza Racing has really given us a lot of bang for the buck or a lot of wheel for the money, and it's quite impressive what they've done, and it's a pretty darn good wheel. So I've told you everything that you need to know about the Moza Racing CS steering wheel, but let's go ahead and make it very clear. I like to do that, break it down with the good, the not so good, and the bottom line, starting off with the good, and that being, it is a great price for this steering wheel. Magnetic shifters, carbon paddles, good feeling rotaries, programmable rev light bar, NRG style quick release, identifying labels, nowhere finish on rim, bonus labeling stickers. And now on to the not so good, starting off with the fact that it is a Moza proprietary steering wheel. It only works with Moza bases. Cheap feeling wheel rim covering. Off center center stripe. Heavy wheel rim. And now on to the bottom line. getting this many features into this steering wheel is quite an accomplishment. This is a very nice setup for $279. And when I take everything that this gives you for the money, I can't think of another wheel on the market that achieves that at that price. I mean, there are probably some others that get close, but this is a lot of steering wheel for the money, and it is very impressive. Now with that, yes, the wheel rim is super cheap. This is not the best covering. I mentioned that before. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's a little slippery. It's, again, I don't think it's going to wear. That's the pro. But the thing that does bother me, and I don't really care how cheap things are, that off-center stripe is really going to bother some people. And I doubt this is true of all of them. Maybe this was a pre-production model, so we'll have to check. But, I mean, there are things you could do. You could cover it with a Sharpie. You could cover it with electrical tape. You could choose to ignore it, because I don't personally use the center stripe. Or I have a sticker set here from Moza Racing. It came with my R9 base. I mean, maybe I could do something as simple as just put a nice sticker. Let's try to make sure we get ours straight. What if we just kind of did a nice little Moza Racing sticker right over the part that bothered us? Alright, well maybe that's not so bad right there. Kind of took care or problem solved. Anyway, is it as nice as the RS steering wheel? No, it certainly isn't, and it is over $200 less expensive. So you get what you pay for a little bit, but I mean, even in that, it is a really nice steering wheel for the money. I keep coming back to that. I mean, my pros and cons list wasn't enormous because of the caliber of wheels that we see nowadays, but when you look at the features, when you look what you get for the money, you look at that quick release as the bonus. I mean, the quick release on its own, take that out of the $279 price, and it really looks like a pretty inexpensive steering wheel. So again, I am very, very impressed by what they've made and what you get. Now, for me, I probably would like a couple more buttons. The mini joysticks, I really only use them for up, down, or left, right, and press in, so that reduced it to a 3 function instead of the 10 function that it is potentially could do. So that meant that I was only getting about 18 controls, and I'd like probably a few more than that in a lot of modern race cars. So that's probably one of the biggest things I could really hit it for there is, yeah, I could use a few more, but for a round rim for $279, I don't know if you could ask for any more than that. So I want to thank Moza Racing for sending this over. I hope I've told you everything that you need to know about the Moza Racing CS steering wheel, and that it is compatible with the R9 wheelbase and the big boy race wheelbases, the R16 and the R21 as well. And it is part of that whole Moza Racing proprietary lineup, or ecosystem, if you want to call it. So I hope I told you everything you want to know. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope you've been entertained. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you find out when we have more videos. Be sure to get in on our Discord channel so you can be part of our community. And thank you for watching. This is the Simpit. I'm Sean Cole, and I'll see you on the track.